So we have been looking at this passage from Abbé Raynal, French Enlightenment propagandist, and in the last session we covered basically the central thesis of this passage: the nature of modern secularism, the nature of modern state, and today we are going to wrap it up. And before we do that, I'll just want to retrace the basic train of our thought, or the basic line of, or the sequence of our arguments so far. So what we have seen is that modern state is something unique in human history, in a sense, in its reach, even though it's not unique in its ambition. Other institutions have had those ambitions, for example, religion. So modern state but I guess what differentiates modern state from religion, for example, is that modern state tries to hide its real ambitions. From those under its ambit, and perhaps from itself as well. Who knows? And the ambition of modern state is that it is totalizing. Nothing escapes it. In that sense, modern state is a way of life, or what Muslims call a deen. One overarching institution, ideology, a way of life, a center of power. It is totalizing in this specific sense, that nothing in principle is sovereignty. So everything is included in its ambit, its legitimate sphere of power or rule or whatever. But by totalizing, that's what we mean by totalizing, that everything, it structures everything. And by structuring everything, it doesn't mean that it actually runs everything, but it means that everything exists according to its permission, and as far as it permits. It doesn't mean that it actually rules everything to the same extent. And that's why it is, even though it is a totalizing state, it is not necessarily totalitarian state, and we should differentiate between those two. I mean, modern state can be totalitarian, I think, mostly when it's actually threatened and its power is actually weak. That's when it becomes it is obliged to become totalitarian, but it is totalizing. So we should differentiate between totalizing and totalitarian. So by totalizing, I mean that everything, it encompasses everything. So everything falls under its orbit. Whether it is religion or whether it is education or economy or whatever, politics. That's what totalizing means. That is, it structures everything. It structures everything and provides for everything. For everything. The rules and conditions for its existence as well as its operation. But totalizing doesn't necessarily mean totalitarian. Why? Because although totalizing state can be totalitarian, even though it structures everything, that is, sets rules and conditions for everything's existence, it doesn't mean that it's actually, in fact, directly rule everything in that sense. In fact, as long as everything is structured within its general ambitions and rules, it can, leave things to run their own course. So that is compatible with the notion of totalizing. Totalitarian, on the other hand, try to actually rule everything. And I said totalitarian state is weak because you actually try to rule everything only when you can't guide things from distance, for example. And totalizing doesn't mean that it won't directly rule, but as long as things are run according to its conditions, it's happy to watch you from the distance. Okay, so this is the first thing. The modern state is the totalizing state. Modern state is the totalizing state so in that sense, this is the broader sense of the term states. Which is defined in or enshrined in constitutions and all that. The actual particular structuring of a state and its different parts like judiciary and police and army and executive, they are, subservient to this general sense of the state. So I would say this sense of the state is the more particular sense of a state or more specific sense of a state. So what I'm talking about here is the more general sense of the state. So state in that sense is totalizing in the sense that it actually structures and provide rules and condition for the existence and operation of everything. Everything, actually, not just in principle. So it might not actually prescribe any religion, but what type of religion is acceptable and what type of religion is not acceptable. So it will provide an ambit for the function of religion, for example. The same for other matters of life. It might not actually give in fact, education is tightly run by modern states, but generally it provides the general rule for the type of education and all those things. It might not actually, prescribe a specific, education system as such. So it encompasses everything, in the sense that it structures everything and provides the rule for the existence of everything and for the operation of everything, whether they are institutions, whether they are social groups, whether they are religions, whether they are political parties, whether that is a culture, whether that's economy or whatever. So modern state is totalizing in that sense, and the principle which provide it, the principle of that totalizing power, what structures or what provide the general framework for this totalizing power or this structuring of everything is the concept of interest. That's what differentiates modern capitalist states from any other states, apart from its totalizing power. And it says that people are sovereign, and sovereignty of people can take different forms. It can take the form of two-party democracy, it can take the form of one-party democracy, it can take the form of dictatorship. They are all part of this modern states. The sovereign is the people. So even Hitler ruled in the name of people, even though he was the master because he represented his people. He sort of claimed that he speaks for the German people. Obviously, the people, the sovereign, and interest, these are mythical concepts, abstract concepts. They don't refer to actually existing people as such. So modern state is totalizing in the sense I just described. And the principle which provides it, the framework for this totalization is interest. And this, what is the interest? So every institution, every policy would be determined in principle based on what is in the interest of the people. And the people decide what is the interest in theory. But the people themselves, the actual people, might not be capable of that. So that can become a technical matter to technocrats, for example. They might tell what is the interest of people, for example, economists and things. So what in theory, the people decide what is in the interest. So you have to actually always refer to the people. Even though when you're attacking Iraq or Afghanistan, you actually attack it in the name of the Afghan people or the Iraqi people, these mythical people, in the name of which you are actually bombarding actual people. So the people decide what is the interest in theory, but in practice, this is decided by the economists, moralists, technocrats. Because in practice, the interests take the form of the sovereignty of desire. And sovereignty of desire practical manifestation is sovereignty of capital. That it is in the interest of people that scarcity is overcome and abundance is achieved, so that people can do whatever they want. That's the logic. So that's why, in order to do that, we need to leave the matters to those who best know how to do that. That is, capitalists and their agents. Managers, CEOs, economists, politicians, and all that. Because they know how to overcome scarcity, and that is in the interest of people, and how to achieve abundance. So that's why when people commit themselves to the sovereignty of interest, they actually commit themselves, they subsume or make themselves subservient to capitalists, because these are the people who claim to or know how to overcome scarcity and achieve abundance. So that's why the system, so state is totalizing, his principle is interest, and sovereign would decide what is in the interest, and sovereign are the people, the mythical creatures. But in actuality, those who know how to accumulate know what is in the interest, because it is in the interest of people that scarcity is overcome. That's the sole interest, sole general interest. And abundance is achieved. Only then people would be able to do whatever they want. So sovereignty of people in the name of interest actually leads to the sovereignty of capital. That's the logic of accumulation. So what rules in a modern state is capital. Not capitalist, but capital. That is the logic of accumulation. And everybody else is the servant of this all-encompassing and never ceasing search to overcome scarcity and achieve abundance. That's what modern state has been trying to do for the last 100 years or so. So all the states which commit themselves to this, to the sovereignty of the logic of capitalism, logic of accumulation, are capitalist states, capitalist societies, and have capitalist individualities, etc., and capitalist education system. And everything else should be subservient to this. And the minimum thing is that they shouldn't be able to challenge this logic in any practical term. And any threat to this logic and institutions which are guarding this logic has to be destroyed or reformed. And religion comes there. So religion which want to practically challenge and overcome capitalism and overthrow capitalist order are to be either reformed depending on their capability or be destroyed by various means. And that's what he means when he says that and here he's taking the example of religion because religion was relevant at that point. But after once religion became passé in any real sense as a threat to capitalism, then obviously religion lost that position of being, a threat to capital in most of the European and Western world. In the Islamic world, the threat is still there, at least in principle. So that's why Islam becomes the target. But religion is just an example. Any ideology or any institution which can actually pose a challenge to this order has to be either reformed or, if it cannot be reformed, has to be destroyed. So that's what he's saying in the rest of the paragraph. So it's saying it pertains to this authority, that authority of the state, the authority of capital, and this authority alone, the authority of the logic of capital, to examine the dogmas and discipline of religion or dogmas and discipline of any institution. And as to dogmas, to make sure that they contradict common sense. And common sense is defined by the logic of capital. They would not expose peaceful order, that is the capitalist order, to discipline. Made all the more dangerous by the fact that the dogmatic ideas of happiness and dogmatic ideas of happiness are any ideas which see happiness in taming your desires, subserving or the sovereignty of desire to some higher order, to the truth, to the other world, to the glory of God, or whatever. That cannot be done. Dogmatic idea of happiness combined, not expose peaceful order to disturbances, made all the more dangerous by the fact that the dogmatic ideas of a happiness to come are, that is the other world, are like paradise, for example, are to be combined with the zeal for God's glory. So you're trying to establish God's glory on earth, God's law on earth, rather than the law of the capital. And the submission to truths. The truth is also cannot oppose capital, because the sovereignty of desire is obviously exactly opposite to the truth, because you commit yourself to the sovereignty of desire because you commit yourself to subsuming truth to the sovereignty of desire. So you can either take truth as a sovereign or the desires as a sovereign. They can't both be sovereign. So submission to truth that are regarded as revelation, the otherworldly insights are banned as long as they are in any meaningful sense a threat to the capitalist order. And discipline to ascertain that it doesn't offend prevailing mores. Like religion has to be work within the overall rules and conditions of the existence, which are demarcated by the logic of capital, dampen patriotic spirit. So obviously the people and the related to the people is the nationalism. It's always a great instrument for establishing and sustaining the sovereignty of capital, to ascertain that it doesn't offend prevailing moods, dampen patriotic spirit, enfeeble courage, nor return people away from industry, that is capital. Marriage at that time was important because capital was more reliant on a family system, but today marriage is not that important. And public affairs, that it harm neither the population nor sociability, that it not inspire fanaticism and intolerance. Fanaticism and intolerance are anything which opposes the logic of capitalism in practical terms. So division between family members, between families in the same city, between city within a kingdom, between kingdoms of earth. So the only division is between those who submit to capital and those who don't submit to capital. This division shouldn't be overcome by any other division, shouldn't be subsumed under any other division. That it does not diminish the respect due to the sovereign, and the real sovereign is the capital, the logic of capital, and to the magistrate, to its agents, whether they are the managers or the companies or the CEOs or the politician or the technocrat, and that it advocates neither the maxim of demoralizing austerity, so otherworldliness. So if it an ideology that argues for and struggle to establish austerity, otherworldliness, overcoming this worldliness, that is demoralizing, because it is demoralizing for the sovereignty of capital, nor counsel that leads to madness that is stream of overcoming capital and its sovereignty of overcoming the kingdom of capital and trying to establish the kingdom of God, for example. It can take many other forms. So that's a basic idea, and I think that concludes a discussion of this paragraph. Thank you.